What's going on is Juice Audio, and these are one of the best studio monitors I've ever used, the Ex-Machina Ganymedes. So you probably never heard of Ex-Machina. They're a fairly new audio monitor brand on the market. They make speakers such as these. And they're a no expense spared company that brings insane technology and innovation to the market. From the design of the cabinet to the way the carbon fiber is weaved, no detail on this monitor is overlooked and nothing is traditional. And for that reason, I really believe this company is pushing the boundaries on studio monitor design to the next era of audio quality. I've never heard a speaker so fast, precise, and dead flat ever. So let's get into why these are so good and a few of their faults. So the Ex-Machina Ganymedes are a near-field, 3-way high-performance studio monitor. They come in at $7,000 and they fit in the high-end budget of studio monitors. They're basically a more compact version of their higher-end model, the Pulsars, and all of their models utilize the coaxial speaker design with the tweeter in the middle of the mid-range. What this essentially allows is perfect time alignment and phase to be reproduced from the most important and sensitive frequencies. There's so much more engineering and tech that's involved into making these speakers, but I'm gonna try my best not to nerd out with all that. And these speakers implement a lot of DSP, digital signal processing. And some people are personally more in favor of strictly analog speakers, but we're going to get into that topic today later at the end of the video. So these monitors play from 45 kilohertz to 30 kilohertz at plus or minus 1 dB. Yes, you heard that right, plus or minus 1 dB. So these monitors play dead flat up the range. And the low end rolls off at 38 hertz at negative 6 dB. The max SPL is 106 dBs at 1 meter. So starting with the tweeter, it is a 1-inch TechStream dome. TechStream is a thin ply woven carbon fiber, is extremely stiff. The tweeter, in my opinion, has a sound between an aluminum driver and a soft dome. It plays from 2 kHz to 30 kHz and gets 50 watts RMS. It's seated in the mid-range driver so that the magnets line up and the time alignment and directivity is perfect. The mid-range cone essentially becomes a throat of a horn to project the tweeter. The 5.5-inch mid-range driver is made up of the same material, with the carbon fiber spread so that the weak points in the cone are where they perform best. The surround is underhung to keep constant response throughout the whole mid-range. With the tweeter and the mid-range together, this unit basically becomes one point source speaker, and it plays from 200 Hz to 2 kHz and gets 75 watts RMS. All the components are made in collaboration with Seos drivers in Norway. This company produces high performance, low distortion drivers for many hi-fi companies and also for Amphion speakers. The Woofer is a 7-inch aluminum driver in a sealed cabinet design. Sealed cabinet design is the acoustically superior design. It stops exactly when the amp tells it to, unlike ported woofers that move a tiny bit after. This means you get faster and tighter bass at the expense of less efficiency and less bass extension. This driver has an extremely high excursion to combat these trade-offs, and it plays from 38 Hz to 200 Hz and gets 125 watts RMS. So let's take a quick look at some of the measurements they provide on their website. So starting with the frequency response, as you can see here at 40 Hertz around there, it's going to be dead flat up the range. This is almost ruler perfect from the DSP design that they're doing. Then we got the phase response, and this is one thing that they're super proud of. Usually speakers will have a phase warp, so it won't have a linear phase, but with these speakers they did some magic with look ahead that it corrects the phase throughout the whole response. So here's the frequency response off angle. So your first one here is going to be flat if you're directly in front of them. But if you notice that if you're off angle, the frequency response is still really linear. Usually speakers will roll off early here. And what this is going to give you is a super wide sound stage and a consistent response if you're moving. And the one fault of these speakers, because of their DSP, is you can get a lot of latency. So we got around 45, 46 is how much latency you're going to get at full calibration. So always keep that in mind. So the cabinet is made out of a material I've never ever seen before. It's called Valchromat. It's stiff, dense, and well damped, and has none of the artifacts that ported designs will give you, such as chuffing or a group delay. It honestly just feels like concrete. Just listen to this tap test. It doesn't transfer any vibrations at all, and they literally feel like boulders, so just make sure that your desk or stands are super solid. The back of these are super simple, just an XLR input with no volume knob at all. There's a few switches here, quarter space, half space, and full space. Quarter space and half space are just going to limit the bass a little bit more if you're working in a smaller room and you have some bass buildup. We also have a switch here if you want a low latency mode or you want the full calibration. So if you're producing, you're definitely going to want the low latency mode. This is still super flat, but it just has a little bit less tweaking from the DSP. So my first impressions is that these are the fastest studio monitors I've ever heard. Transients are reproduced so crystal clear, and I've heard and worked on some amazing studio monitors and also line arrays in the live setting, so me saying that means a lot. Especially since I started working in live audio, working with like $500,000 line arrays, I've never heard something so crystal clear that you can't unhear how it sounds. Some of like the fastest, most dynamic transients, crystal clear bass, and a lifelike soundstage and imaging. Especially like when we rig them up in open air where there's no room to influence how they sound. Ever since hearing those, I've always known that there's more to sound than what I'm hearing out of a lot of studio monitors. But these Ganymedes really leave me not wanting more for the first time. But don't get me wrong, these are a precision tool made for mixing. They're like a scalpel, and you will not be happy just listening to these for casual listening. So the way I can describe the sound of these is that they're sterile and clinical, but it's so much so that it's in a way that I really enjoy it now. And these are dead flat no matter where I've placed these monitors. The imaging and soundstage is so precise. If you turn your head or walk away around the corner from these monitors, it sounds like there's someone in the room singing through these monitors. The tweeter plays the high end so effortlessly and never came across as colored. The midrange is the best performer of these. I've never heard a midrange so crystal clear and fast. Reverb effects and elements in the background of the mix present themselves in a 3D space with depth. So my favorite speakers to mix on are the mix cubes, and I've become so accustomed to them and how they sound now. I know if you get a mix to sound good on those, it will sound good anywhere. It gives you a scope into the mid-range, and once you get that right, the treble and the bass just happens to fall in place. And these Ganymedes really give me a mid-range I could trust. It's unforgiving, and it tells you right away what frequencies are going to stand out and what you need to fix. When I started mixing on these, the first thing I did is bandpass the mid-range on the master bus while mixing, so I could just hear the mid-range just how the mix cubes give it to me. But after a while, I took that off, and after listening to my references, I began to trust these right away for the first time. That mid-range just balances the speaker throughout the whole range and gives you that focus on what matters. The bass is super fast and controlled as well. The way I can describe sealed monitors is that the bass stays in the cabinet. It's not that kind of bass that you feel in your chest. It's more that you just hear it as it purely is. These don't excite the room, and for like the first time ever putting these in that studio, I had no need to SonarWorks these at all. The sound is just like projected to your ears as if you're listening on headphones. At low levels, the sound is consistent, and I have no need to turn these higher than speaking level. I feel like because the transients are so fast on these, you might not want to turn these up loud because it could easily damage your ears. But that's a really good thing because it trains your ears to be selective and listen at what matters and not get excited over just loud music. So all that I described so far is from an audio engineer's perspective. But if you're looking at these through a producer's perspective, you might not be as happy with these. The delay at full calibration is 45 milliseconds, so you're definitely gonna have to turn that off when you're making some music. But these will help you be way more selective with your sound and choose what's important right from the jump. That's important because production is so much more important than the mix. If you nail the production through miking techniques or mic selection, the song will eventually just mix itself. However, like I said, these speakers are pretty clinical and sterile, so listening to these at loud levels if you're getting excited producing might give you some ear fatigue. And these are not as fun in the bass region as other monitors, so I definitely would not recommend these for bass heavy music. It's not because they're low on bass, it's because the texture of the sealed cabinet is not as exciting, but I still wouldn't even use those with the subwoofer. They sound just perfect how they are. But if you're not used to hearing speakers with such low distortion, it might be polarizing at first to hear these monitors and you might feel like they have no bass, but trust me, they do. So now we're going to talk about the digital versus the analog argument. I will say DSP has made huge improvements over the last few years. Nowadays, almost all the monitors that are coming out are utilizing DSP, and it's improved so much. And I really feel like these speakers mark a point where DSP is far ahead of analog now. You simply just can't get this sound with analog crossovers or timing. Of course, it has the drawback of latency, but you really need to weigh that cost before you get into looking into monitors. I honestly prefer these speakers over the ATCs over there. I will say the ATCs do have a different mid-range that is less fatiguing, but at this price point, it's all preference. I prefer the Ganymedes, but some other people prefer the ATCs. Overall, these speakers are groundbreaking in technology, and if you're in the market for monitors, you have to demo these in your room and see how good they are. Thanks, Dan, for sending these in from Ex-Machina. All these thoughts are of my own, If you enjoyed this video, like and subscribe, comment down below if you have any questions, and it helps support the channel. So thank you guys.